grew up.
In Iowa, where the way you describe Iowa, it sounds like that scene in 300. Like, it's like Spartan civilization, where they rip you from your mother at 8 and they throw you into the wolf pack or whatever, and you come back with like a sword and like the dead head of a wolf, and it's like, he is now a man.
Oh, yeah. If you're a farm kid,
that's what happens.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're driving tractors by the age of 10.
My gosh.
You know, because you're doing farm work. You're helping out. You're an adult. Like, you earn your keep.
Okay. Well, here in modern society, we have paved roads. I don't know. I mean, I think it's a cultural thing, to tell you the truth.
That's true.
And I also think it differs family by family. Like, in your region, clearly, that self-reliance is a necessity. The geography is so well spaced that it's like, listen, you're going to end up on your own, so you're going to have to figure this out. But even families where they have like an older sibling that picked on them, they tend to be more self-reliant, you know, whereas if they had somebody that was taking care of them or babied them or whatever. So, I don't know, 19, I feel like the college years, Nick, is when a lot of people go through this identity reshifting where they self-recognize as an adult. And this is when we describe a lot of parents as going through empty nest. This is when they are learning how to respect you as an adult child.
So I wonder if she's the oldest child.
That'd be really interesting. I'd love to see a genogram on this person. A genogram is like, for the listener, like a family tree with lots of symbolism that teaches us all these things, like the relationships you had with different people and if there was trauma and what their health history was and all these interesting facets. And you should look up genograms. It's a really interesting thing, an exercise to do for yourself. But yeah, I'd be really interested in that because there's clearly a hyper focus from mom to this child, this daughter. And if she's the oldest, that would make a lot of sense. Or the baby. Sometimes if you're the baby, you're the one that they're going to protect and they're used to it. A lot of times the oldest child actually becomes pretty self-reliant pretty quickly.
Now, we've heard the term helicopter parent. That has become very popular lately.
That's what this is.
Yeah. At what age do you think is the appropriate age that you have to kind of start setting those boundaries and kind of start letting the child explore for themselves and letting bad things happen?
I like how you phrase that because your first comment was directed to the writer, the 19-year-old, and saying like, hey, don't be selectively accepting of her, you know, over-intrusion when it suits you, which is a good note. But I think that more often than not, both sides are kind of responsible for redrawing the boundary.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And like as a child, you don't even know. You've never grown up before. You know, you don't know what you're doing. But the parent really should be the one doing it. And so I want to see parents starting to pull back senior year of high school. And that's actually when they start dragging their kids into my therapy office because they're like, this is coming unglued. He's going to be a mess by the time he gets to college. Fix him now while I still have control over his life. And I'm fine with that to some extent, but I really want you to start pulling back because in like 5 more months, you have zero control over what his choices are. So you need to start letting him fly now in training and see what he does.
Yeah, I mean, and that makes sense. And again, I think maybe this is where culturally there's a difference, or regionally there's a difference. Because again, like I think my parents kind of started doing that when I was a freshman.
Okay, in high school. Yeah.
And that's kind of when I really started. I didn't notice it at the time, but I noticed it now looking back, that there was a definite shift that occurred from them telling me what's expected of me and what I need to do, to them kind of starting to back off. And instead of telling me, hey, this is what you need to do, they would ask me, so what are you going to do?
Right. And what did you learn?
Right.
When it doesn't turn out.
Yeah. My dad's favorite thing to say.
What did you learn?
So what'd you learn?
So actually, I agree. I would say I don't want to see a family beginning that kind of withdrawal senior year. I want to see it completed by senior year.
Gotcha.
So I want that to begin at an age-appropriate level every year, right? New responsibilities being handed off to the kid, new areas of their life that they're entirely in control of and that they personally get to experience the consequences of. Right. In a small way at first, and then slowly graduating that sphere of influence until senior year, much of their life is left to chance and left to their own discretion.
Yeah. I really feel like my parents kind of had that maybe that question, well, can he survive the outcome?
Okay.
If he can,
let's roll dice.
Let's let him do it.
Yeah.
If he can't, then we should step in.
Yeah, I get it. But I got to tell you, Nick, I'm a very overprotective parent, and I very much empathize with the mom in this. Because I have had to go through an extensive amount of self-retraining to learn how to allow my children to take risks. Because I am the dad who like dives to like protect them from bumping their head, or if they're pushing themselves off of the kitchen table, you know, in the chair, like tipping backward, I'm wincing. I constantly want to save them. But I had this recognition where I realized, you know what, the reason I wince at that is because I've done that and fallen back and hurt myself. And if I deny you that learning opportunity, I'm really ensuring that you get hurt more often, not less.
That's a good point.
And so I had to realize as a parent that allowing them to skin their knee is better than allowing them to get decapitated. So it's better that I let them take the small injuries that they'll recover from. That way they can be immune to the larger injuries that would have devastated them.
Good point.
So I'm with you, Mom, but also back it on off. And 19-year-old girl, good luck in college, and wrap this internship up, change your name. It's still time. Marry the first guy you meet, take his last name. This is all going to work out.
The good news is there's a lot of other industries you can work in.
Yeah, and every internship's designed to suck. And that's what college is for, kid. And I'm sorry you got humiliated, but use this as an opportunity. Tell your mom how you feel. At least do that. Tell her this was humiliating. And then ban her and create like some kind of boundary. You say, Mom, I forbid you from doing certain things. I need to adult a little bit on my own, and see how she responds to that. But yeah, I encourage you to try to establish a boundary somehow, because that is nuts. But I totally get it, because I'm totally that dad. But I will be doing that when my kids are in college. I'll be calling the professor, be like, who the hell do you think you are?
Oh yeah.
I'm like that now. When my kid gets like a C, like I show up at like parent teacher conference with like 10 like files of data that I'm like, all of these were graded wrong. Like, you need to give him a B+, and it's hard. So
I'll bet you're a joy to work with.
Terrible. Terrible. My wife's a teacher at my son's school.
Oh God.
Yeah. So it's
That's
awful.
even worse.
So it's always her colleague, and she's like, okay, chill the F out. And I'm like, no, we'll not chill the F out. She's ruining his chances to get into Harvard.
Oh my God.
Yep. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we talk about students who self-harm. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
And we're back. You're listening to Pod Therapy. This next question is from a teacher working with a student who self-harms. My student is self-harming and may not get help. What should I do? I'll call the student Leah. We have taken attendance every morning when the students enter the exam center. Leah is a new student and transferred late into the school year, meaning she has had to catch up quick and do tons of studying. I stopped her to say, Leah, well done on your PE exam. She scratched her hair and her sweater sleeve rolled down. I saw bright red cuts and parallel lines on her wrist. It seemed like she forgot the cuts were there. I couldn't ask her about it because we had to take the exam. She came to me later in the day asking to see her PE exam grade. As we were talking, I asked her why she was wearing a cardigan in such hot weather. She said, if I take the cardigan off, I'll forget it somewhere at school. We don't have guidance counselors or anything of that nature. Administration always tells us to call the parents, but she has told me in class that her parents don't believe in therapy, etc. I'm worried she won't get the proper treatment. What can I do?
Yeah. So, okay, let's start with what self-harm is. Let's start with what cutting is. So, most listeners probably can piece this together for themselves, but some people will cut themselves and they will inflict a self-injury, right? So they'll take something sharp, doesn't have to be a knife, and they will cut lines in themselves. It might be small, it might be little dashes. They might cut in places that you wouldn't notice, like the bottoms of their feet or the back of their knees. And they also might cut in places like the wrist or the legs or anywhere else. And it's a confusing situation because a lot of people, when they first see that, they immediately assume that this person is inherently suicidal and that it's quite serious. Now, that's not something I would rule out. It's something I want to learn more about. But more often, we find that the cutting is actually a way that they're coping with the rigors of their lives and not necessarily an attempt to end their life.
Exactly. Yes, spot on. That's actually one of the things I was going to bring up too. My first piece of advice is don't overreact.
Yeah.
Because for the majority of the people who look at this, they see this as a much scarier situation than what it really is.
Right.
When people are doing self-injuring behavior, cutting, things like that, it's typically not lethal. The only time it's really lethal is if they make a mistake.
Right.
Their intent is not to kill themselves.
Usually, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's self-harm does not equal suicide. So deaths, by and large, occur by accident. So having worked with a lot of parents who deal with this, there is a way that sometimes parents will overreact to the situation and potentially make the situation worse.
Yes.
The best thing that you can possibly do is get the child connected to a therapist, let the therapist deal with it. What I've seen happen in the past is parents will try to control the behavior, and they will try to get involved. And I've seen this before where when the kid comes home from school or at the end of every night, they will basically do like a strip search. You know, let me check your body. Let's go through this whole thing. And that is never effective.
You're actually adding stress.
Well, and not only that, the behavior serves a purpose.
Right.
It's doing something. So when you try to stop that behavior, all you're doing, you're not stopping the behavior. You're moving it underground.
That's right.
They're going to move the cutting from someplace that's easily visible to someplace that's not as easily visible.
Yeah.
And then now lethality went through the roof.
It increases.
Right.
Or they'll become self-destructive in other ways. Right? Like they might hurt themselves with chemicals or, start abusing substances. So to the writer, first off, I'm a former teacher and I've seen this kind of thing in schools. And I realize as a teacher, I remember before I had behavioral health training, how scary it is. And I think a lot of people, Nick, when they see this, they're like, oh my gosh, this is level 3. Like this is as scary as it gets. It's the highest level of DEFCON. And I understand that. But I think I want to echo what Nick said. Stay calm. Okay, the very first thing is do not overreact. This is usually non-lethal, usually, okay? Talking to the child, what I see you doing already, where you're asking, why are you wearing that cardigan? And, hey, I see these marks on you. It's okay to approach her privately, and it's okay to start having a conversation. I want the tone of that conversation to be inviting, to be understanding. Not to affirm or praise the behavior, not to say, yeah, I totally get it. I would do that too. That's reaching too far. That's trying too hard. But creating a safe place to say, in this case, Leah, I see these on your arm, honey. Can you tell me what that's from? Oh, well, I just XYZ, I just fell. Okay, honey, some people do that because maybe they're going through a lot. And sometimes that actually feels good in a weird way. I've known lots of people that have that. Is that something that maybe you've experienced? Well, I don't know, sometimes. So I want you to start that, right? And if you're engaging this child and creating a safe place for them to begin opening up, it's valuable to me as a therapist because you're going to get more data. And right now, you appear to be the only adult who has any data. So I like that you're consulting with your supervisor. You absolutely must report this. This is not the kind of thing you get to keep secret and keep looking into. You continue to look into it under the guidance of your principal. And it's true that your principal will probably say you need to invite the family into this, which is also correct. Even though there's the potential that the family will foul it up, you must invite the family into this because you are a mandated reporter. You're going to have to talk about this child's self-harm. However, I would like you to do some research first. I would like you to consult with somebody in your community, a therapist who's willing to do an hour of pro bono work and come down into the parent conference and explain, hey, here's what self-harm is, here's what cutting is, here's the right way to adapt to it. There's also great literature online. There's tons of really good books and really good websites that describe the best way to approach this. There's even support groups, for the kids to join. But don't overreact yourself. Don't underreact. Create an environment that is looking for more information. Yes, tell the principal. Yes, tell the parents. But try to increase your own awareness of it too.
Definitely. Well, and I think, there's, like I said before, get the child connected to a therapist.
Yeah.
Let the therapist work out all the details. But in the meantime, there are little things that you can do to be supportive. As the child is working with the therapist and they're sorting out dealing with the emotion and dealing with where all this is coming from. In the meantime, I would say get her a first aid kit.
Yeah.
Teach her how to use it.
Yeah.
And also really stress and kind of have a conversation with her about making sure she never goes to sleep while she's still bleeding. And one thing it seems very counterproductive because it almost kind of sounds like you're condoning the behavior. But in a way, when you show the child, look, I'm not going to try to stop you from doing this. I'm concerned. I want to make sure that you're safe. I want to make sure that you're going to be okay. When you do that, you are now an ally.
Yeah.
They confide in you, they trust in you, and you've gotten yourself a little bit closer towards helping them.
That's right.
And talking them into going to see a therapist.
Yeah.
And they may buy into that if they see that you're an ally. So I went to a seminar with a researcher in